Imagine being called paranoid for simply trusting your instincts. My name is Alyssa Moore, and this is the story of how my husband gaslighted me for months, called me crazy, and made me doubt my own sanity. Until one night, I picked up his phone and heard a stranger whisper, "Baby, she's calling again. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you love stories about justice, strength, and truth, because what happened next changed everything." You know how people say, you just know when something's off. Well, I knew. It wasn't the late-night texts or the extra work meetings, it was the silence. The kind of silence that hums in a marriage like static, that heavy pause when someone you love stops looking at you the same way. My husband, Marcus, used to be the kind of man who couldn't stop talking. He'd hum while brushing his teeth, ramble about podcasts I didn't understand, text me heart emojis in the middle of his meetings. But lately, that warmth had faded into one-word replies. Fine, busy, tired. At first I told myself he was just stressed. We'd been saving for a new house, juggling bills, and life was loud. But deep down, something inside me kept whispering, "No, Alyssa, it's not just stress." I tried to ignore it, until one night the phone rang. It was late, maybe past midnight. Marcus was in the shower, and his phone lit up beside me on the nightstand. A name flashed across the screen, unknown number. I stared at it. The screen went dark. Then it rang again. My heart began to race, but I didn't pick it up. I just sat there, frozen, counting the seconds until he came out of the bathroom. When he did, towel slung around his waist, I asked quietly, "Who keeps calling this late?" He barely looked at me. "Work. Chill, Alyssa." Then he laughed. The kind of laugh that cuts. "You're starting to sound paranoid, babe." That word, paranoid, echoed in my mind long after he fell asleep beside me. For days after, I tried to push the thought away, but little things kept happening. He started locking his phone, taking calls on the balcony. Even his cologne changed. You know how love has a smell? Well, his didn't smell like home anymore. It smelled like someone else. One Saturday morning, while folding laundry, I found a gold bracelet tangled in his gym bag. Tiny, elegant, feminine. Not mine. When I held it up, he didn't even blink. "That? Probably my sister's. You're really making something out of nothing lately." But his sister lived 2 states away. That night, I cried in the shower, not because of the bracelet, but because I realized I'd stopped recognizing the man I married. For years, I'd been Alyssa, wife, partner, best friend, but lately, I was just background noise. And when a woman feels like that, her silence starts turning into suspicion. Her suspicion turns into search, and I was done pretending not to see the signs. That night, while Marcus slept, I stared at his phone on the nightstand again. Same black case, same reflection of my face in the dark screen, but this time, my hands weren't shaking. I whispered to myself, "If I'm wrong, I'll apologize, but if I'm right." The phone lit up, the same unknown number. It was her. The glow of Marcus's phone lit up the dark room again, that same number, that same pull in my chest. For a second, I just stared at it, the way you'd stare at an open flame, knowing you'll burn your fingers but needing to touch it anyway. Then, before I could change my mind, I picked it up. "Hello?" My voice was quiet, too calm. There was a pause on the other end, then a whisper, soft, careless, almost playful. "Baby, she's calling again." I didn't breathe, didn't blink. My blood went cold. The phone slipped slightly in my hand, and the woman's tone changed. Panic, sudden and sharp. "Hello? Marcus?" I swallowed hard. "This isn't Marcus." Silence. Then the faint sound of a gasp, followed by a click. She hung up. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the dark screen, hearing the echo of her voice over and over again. "Baby, she's calling again." When Marcus stirred beside me, I dropped the phone like it was burning. He rolled over, eyes half open. "Why are you awake?" I forced a smile. "Couldn't sleep." He yawned, turned away, and within seconds, he was snoring again, peacefully, as if nothing in the world was wrong. But for me, everything had changed. The next morning, I woke up before him and sat at the edge of the bed, just thinking. The phone, the bracelet, the sudden coldness, it all connected now. Every late-night meeting, every unexplained smile, every lie I tried to believe. My hands trembled as I made coffee. I wanted to scream, cry, throw things, but instead, I poured him a cup, like every other morning, because sometimes the most dangerous thing a woman can do is act normal. He walked into the kitchen, freshly shaved, smelling of that new cologne I'd come to hate. "Morning," he said, kissing the top of my head. I wanted to pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled, turned, and said, "Hey Marcus, you got any plans tonight?" He blinked. "Just work, late shift again." I nodded. "Right, of course." When he left that night, I waited 15 minutes, then grabbed my car keys. I didn't even have a plan, just a heartbeat telling me to move. I tailed him through the city, keeping a few cars behind, my headlights off. He drove with confidence, no hesitation, no glances in the mirror. Why would he? In his mind, I was home, being the quiet, trusting wife he'd built his lies around. He pulled up to a sleek, glassy apartment complex in the heart of downtown. I parked across the street, hidden behind a delivery van. I watched as he got out of the car, checked his reflection in the window, and smiled, that smile, the one I hadn't seen in months. Then she appeared. A woman in a silk robe, stepping out to greet him like she'd been waiting all night. She threw her arms around his neck, kissed him, slow, familiar, deliberate. And the way he held her, that's when I knew. It wasn't a fling, it was comfort. The world went silent. The city, the cars, everything, gone. Just me, watching my husband melt into someone else's arms. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and let out a sound I didn't even recognize, half sob, half scream. I could have stormed out. I could have confronted them. But instead, I drove home, slowly, quietly, because this wasn't going to end in shouting. It was going to end in proof. And that night, I decided I wasn't the paranoid wife anymore. I was the woman about to uncover every secret he thought he'd buried. The morning after that night, I woke before the alarm. Marcus's side of the bed was still warm, but I couldn't stand the smell of his cologne on the pillow. It clung to the sheets like the ghost of a woman I hadn't met but already hated. I made breakfast the same way I always did. Eggs, toast, a cup of coffee with 2 sugars. Routine kept me from shaking. Routine made me look harmless. When Marcus came downstairs, tie half done, scrolling through his phone, I smiled the soft, practiced smile every lying man mistakes for trust. "Morning, baby," I said. He kissed my cheek, distracted, and reached for his coffee. He didn't notice I'd switched cups. His had a tiny recording device the size of a coin taped beneath it. That's when I realized I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was the quiet investigator living inside his perfect little life. I started small. Each time he left for late meetings, I wrote down the time, the route he took, the excuses he used. I stopped arguing, stopped questioning, stopped crying. Men like Marcus read silence as surrender, but I was collecting evidence in plain sight. At work I began talking to his assistant, a sweet woman named Lila, who'd always looked nervous around me. Over coffee, I slipped in a gentle question. "Does Marcus still travel with the team to those downtown conferences?" Her eyes darted away. "He handles those himself now." That hesitation told me everything. That night, while Marcus showered, I opened his laptop. The password had changed. So had his wallpaper, now just a black screen. Paranoid, he'd called me. He'd built a digital fortress, and that alone told me I was right. But he'd forgotten one thing. He'd synced his laptop to our family tablet months ago. I waited until he slept, his phone face down on the nightstand, his breathing slow and even. Then I crept to the living room, turned on the tablet and prayed. Within seconds, messages started loading. Blue bubbles, gray bubbles, timestamps, and there it was. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You smell like heaven. Wish she'd stop calling." Her name was Tessa, the same voice I'd heard whispering into my ear that night. My stomach twisted, but I kept scrolling. Every word was a dagger. Pictures, plans, lies layered with baby and sweetheart. He'd told her he was trapped in a loveless marriage, that I was cold, jealous, controlling. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of it all was louder than my pain. For the first time, I saw Marcus not as my husband, but as a story he'd written to protect his ego, and I was about to rewrite the ending. Over the next few days, I played my role to perfection. I packed his lunches, texted him reminders, kissed him goodbye, and each time he walked out the door, I whispered under my breath, "Smile while you can." I downloaded every photo, every message, every receipt he'd carelessly left in his cloud storage. I even found the invoice for the gold bracelet, gift for Tessa, anniversary. Anniversary. He'd built a timeline for their lies. When I showed my best friend Carmen the screenshots, she grabbed my hand. "Alyssa, you could destroy him with this." I nodded. "Oh, I will, but not yet, because revenge, real revenge, isn't about shouting. It's about timing." A week later, Marcus told me he had a conference dinner downtown. I smiled and said, "Wear the blue suit. You look good in that one." He winked, thinking I'd softened. What he didn't know was that I'd booked a table at the same restaurant under a false name, and I wasn't going alone. Carmen came with me, dressed like confidence itself, phone camera ready. We sat near the back, candlelight flickering over our wine glasses. At exactly 8:43 p.m., Marcus walked in hand with Tessa. She was younger than I expected, pretty, dressed in the kind of way that made people turn. I felt nothing, just a cold, steady pulse in my chest. They sat at a corner table, laughing, feeding each other bites of dessert. Marcus leaned in to whisper something in her ear, and she laughed, that same laugh I'd once loved him for. Carmen touched my arm. "Are you okay?" I smiled. "Record everything." When they ordered champagne, I stood, walked straight toward them, heels clicking like a countdown. Marcus's face drained of color. "Alyssa, what are you?" I cut him off with a quiet, calm smile. "Enjoy your conference, sweetheart." I placed a small envelope on their table, the screenshots, the receipts, the call logs. Then I turned and walked away. That night, I didn't cry. I packed a suitcase, took my car keys, and left him sitting in that restaurant with his lies laid bare in front of him. By the time he got home, the house was empty. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because what he didn't know was that every piece of evidence I'd gathered was now sitting safely in my lawyer's inbox, time-stamped, backed up, and ready to make him pay for every single whisper he thought I'd never hear. Naomi had always hated silence, the kind that comes after a storm, thick, humming, almost taunting. But that night, the silence in their bedroom was louder than any scream she'd ever heard. The clock blinked 2:14 a.m. in red. Mark was asleep beside her, chest rising and falling with the calm of a man who had no worries, no guilt, no secrets. His phone lay on the nightstand, face down as always, its case slightly cracked at the corner, the same phone he guarded like a vault. She turned toward him slowly, her heart thudding. Every instinct screamed not to do it, to stay still, to sleep, to pretend everything was fine. But her hand moved anyway, quietly, steadily, like it had a mind of its own. When her fingertips touched the phone, it vibrated. Once, then again, and again. Her stomach dropped. The name flashing on the screen made her throat go dry. Baby. The world seemed to blur. Her pulse roared in her ears. For a full 10 seconds, Naomi just stared at the phone, her breath caught halfway between disbelief and dread. Then, before she could stop herself, she swiped the green icon. A voice, soft, female, sleepy, whispered, "Baby, you're up?" Naomi froze. The world stopped. The woman yawned lightly. "You okay? Did she find out?" Naomi didn't breathe. She couldn't. Her hand shook so hard the phone nearly slipped from her grip. She wanted to speak, to scream, but the words refused to form. Then came the one phrase that would haunt her forever. "I miss you already. Come over when she leaves for work tomorrow." The voice giggled faintly. "You still owe me that promise ring, remember?" Naomi ended the call so fast her finger burned. For a moment, she just sat there, the phone pressed to her chest, feeling her heartbeat crash like thunder. The room suddenly felt smaller, darker. She looked at Mark sleeping soundly, lips parted slightly. The picture of innocence and a bitter laugh escaped her lips before she could stop it. "Baby," she muttered under her breath, eyes glinting. "Right." She got out of bed. Her legs were trembling, but she walked to the bathroom mirror anyway. The woman staring back at her looked like a ghost, eyes red, face pale, veins pulsing with fury. Naomi splashed her face with cold water and looked herself in the mirror again. No tears this time. Only something harder, colder. "Okay," she whispered. "If this is your game, Mark, I can play too." She went back to the bedroom, picked up his phone again, and opened the message thread. The woman's name was Tanya. The chat was full of heart emojis, pet names, and late-night can't-sleep-without-you texts. The most recent one, sent just before midnight, read, "I'll wear that red dress tomorrow if you promise to sneak me your wedding ring again." Naomi scrolled up, her lips tightening, and there it was, a picture of her own hand from months ago, when Mark proposed, except the caption underneath, sent by him, was, "Soon this ring will be yours, baby." The room began to spin. Naomi put a hand over her mouth, choking back a scream. Then something inside her clicked. The heartbreak turned to focus, the shock turned to clarity. She put his phone back exactly where it was and climbed into bed. She lay still for a long while, watching the shadows crawl across the ceiling. By dawn, she wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't shaking. She was planning. The next morning, Mark woke up first. He kissed her forehead like nothing had happened and murmured, "You sleep okay, baby?" Naomi smiled faintly, her eyes unreadable, like a rock. He chuckled, oblivious. "You're something else. You have no idea," she said softly. When he went into the shower, Naomi reached for her phone, snapped a quick photo of his, and sent it to herself. Then she texted an unknown number from his contact list, the one labeled Tanya. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed, "Hey babe, need to talk tonight, alone." She hit send, deleted the message, and placed his phone back just as he returned. Mark walked out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, humming, "What's for breakfast?" Naomi smiled sweetly. "Whatever you want." He kissed her cheek and left for work, leaving his cologne and lies hanging in the air. When the door shut behind him, Naomi's smile faded. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Tonight, I find out everything." She didn't know if she wanted revenge, closure, or proof that her whole marriage had been a mirage. But one thing was certain, she wasn't going to cry in silence anymore. She was going to look betrayal right in the eye. And when she did, she'd make sure Mark Carter never forgot it. All day, Naomi's mind was a storm she couldn't quiet. Every sound, the clink of dishes, the whir of the washing machine, the tick of the wall clock, felt like an echo of Tanya's voice whispering, "Baby, she's calling again." By noon, Naomi had gone from heartbreak to calculation. She wasn't just hurt anymore. She was curious. Who was Tanya? What kind of woman did her husband risk everything for? The first step was easy. She spent the morning scrolling through her social media, and by early afternoon, she'd found her. Tanya Rivers, 29, a makeup artist, all glitter and filters, the kind of woman who posted "Good morning, beautiful souls" captions while posing in silky robes. Naomi studied every photo like evidence. Tanya's smile was soft, her curls perfect, her lips always glossy. But what Naomi noticed most wasn't beauty, it was the familiarity. Tanya had been in the same charity event Naomi and Mark attended 3 months ago. In one of Naomi's old photos, if you looked close enough, you could see Tanya standing at the back of the hall, laughing at something Mark said. A sour laugh escaped Naomi's lips. So that's when it started. She leaned back on her couch, the sunlight spilling over her thrifted yet effortlessly elegant dress, cream linen with a plunging neckline, a small gold chain resting on her collarbone. It wasn't designer, but she wore it like art. Her phone buzzed. "Tanya, hey babe, you okay?" Naomi's breath hitched. So the message she'd sent that morning had worked. She stared at the text for a long second, then typed back, pretending to be Mark. "Need to see you tonight. Same spot?" The reply came instantly. "Of course, been waiting all day." Naomi's pulse quickened. Same spot. That could mean anywhere, but her gut said it was the cafe Mark always claimed to have late meetings at every Thursday. She smiled faintly. Perfect. At sunset, the city was glowing gold and bruised purple, the way only heartbreak can make it look. Naomi stood by the cafe entrance, her sunglasses reflecting the warm streetlight, her heart pounding behind her ribcage like it wanted out. The cafe was small, tucked between a flower shop and a boutique. She'd been there dozens of times before, even with Mark. The irony wasn't lost on her. She slipped inside and took a corner seat, facing the door. Every minute felt like an hour. Then she saw her. Tanya walked in wearing a red silk top and tight jeans, her curls bouncing as she scanned the room. She was radiant, flirtatious, completely unaware that she was walking straight into a storm. Naomi watched as Tanya texted, looking around for Mark. Her lips curved into a little pout of impatience. Naomi waited until Tanya sat down, then rose quietly and approached. "You're Tanya, right?" The woman looked up, startled. Yes? Do I know you?" Naomi smiled thinly. "Not really, but you know my husband." The color drained from Tanya's face. What are you talking about?" Naomi sat down opposite her, crossed her legs and leaned in. "Mark Carter. The man who told you he was single. The man you've been texting every night." For a second, Tanya's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Then she swallowed hard. "Look, I didn't know. He said he wasn't married." Naomi tilted her head. "You didn't know? Really? Because you called him baby while I was lying next to him in bed." Tanya's lips trembled. "You heard that?" "Oh, every word," Naomi said, voice like silk dipped in steel. "Right up to the part where you said you wanted my ring." The silence between them thickened. Tanya's eyes darted toward the door. "I swear, Naomi, if I had known." Naomi cut her off with a quiet laugh. "You know, the funny thing about liars is that they all sound the same when they're cornered." She reached into her bag and slid a printed photo across the table, the one from the charity event, with Tanya laughing at Mark in the background. "This is where it began, right?" Naomi's tone sharpened. "When he first noticed you." Tanya's gaze dropped. He said you two were falling apart, that he was lonely, that you didn't love him anymore. Naomi smiled, but there was nothing kind in it. And that made it okay? Tanya didn't answer. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. Naomi leaned closer. Listen carefully, Tanya. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to end this, but I need you to do something for me. Tanya looked up, eyes wide. What do you mean? Naomi's voice softened, almost kind. He's been lying to both of us. I just want him to tell the truth. Tonight, to both our faces. Tanya hesitated. You want me to meet him? Naomi nodded. Yes, one last time, but this time, I'll be there too. The younger woman's jaw dropped. You're serious? Naomi's gaze didn't waver. I've never been more serious in my life. Tanya's lip quivered, but something like guilt flickered behind her eyes. Finally, she nodded. Okay, tell me where. Naomi sat back, a quiet smile curving her mouth. Don't worry, I'll take care of that part. That night, when Mark came home, Naomi was calm, almost eerily so. Dinner was ready. Candles were lit. The smell of roasted garlic filled the air. He paused at the door, surprised. Wow, what's all this? Just thought we could have a quiet dinner, she said. You've been working so hard lately. Mark smiled, walking over to kiss her cheek. You're amazing, you know that? Naomi's expression didn't change. So I've been told. They sat. They ate. They talked about nothing. Every bite Naomi took was deliberate, every laugh rehearsed. Halfway through she said casually, By the way, I stopped by the cafe today. Mark froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Oh, for what? Naomi looked at him, her voice was soft. You tell me. He blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Her lips curved. You'll find out soon enough. I invited someone over for dessert. Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Mark's face went pale. Who is that? Naomi rose slowly, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. Someone you might recognize. She opened the door. Tanya stood there looking terrified but resolute. Mark's entire world seemed to collapse in that instant. Tanya, what the hell are you doing here? Naomi turned, voice low but razor sharp. You said she didn't exist, Mark, so go ahead. Tell me again. The silence that followed was almost holy. You could hear his guilt breathe. Naomi folded her arms. I'll wait. For a full 10 seconds, the world was silent. Not the calm kind of silence, the heavy, choking kind, the kind that hums with tension, where the truth itself feels like thunder about to strike. Mark stood frozen at the dining table, his fork still in midair, while Tanya stood by the door, clutching her purse like it could shield her from what was coming. Naomi leaned against the wall, arms folded, eyes locked on him. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just waited. Say it, she said softly. Tell me I'm crazy again. Mark's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Tanya took a small step forward. Naomi, please. Naomi held up a hand. You stay right there, both of you. We're not doing this halfway. Tonight the lies stop. She moved toward the table, every step slow, deliberate, her heels echoing like a countdown. When I asked you about her, you said I was paranoid. You said I was losing my mind. Her voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through it. Do you have any idea what that does to a woman? To be told her instincts, her truth, are just imagination? Mark's jaw clenched. Naomi, I didn't mean. Oh, you meant it. She laughed once, dry and bitter. You meant every word when you made me feel small, when you called me insecure, when you held my face and said you're imagining things, baby. Tanya lowered her gaze, guilt painting her cheeks. Naomi turned to her. And you, how long were you going to keep pretending you didn't know? How long were you going to play the victim of his lies while scrolling through pictures of my family on Facebook? Tanya stammered. I'm sorry, I swear I didn't know at first. But when I found out, you stayed. Naomi finished for her. Because he made you feel special. Because he said I didn't appreciate him. She smiled coldly. That's his favorite trick. Mark finally snapped. Naomi, that's enough. You can't just ambush me in my own house. Naomi's laugh sliced through the room. Your house? Oh, Mark, I pay the mortgage. I bought the furniture. You brought the lies. Mark's face reddened. You're twisting everything. Am I? Naomi stepped closer, eyes blazing. Then why did I find her earrings under our bed? Why did she answer your phone whispering, baby? She's calling again. The room went still. Tanya's lip trembled. Naomi's voice dropped to a whisper. You don't get to rewrite this story. I was there. I heard her voice. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Naomi. I really am. Naomi looked at her for a long moment and then sighed. You know what? I believe you. Because the truth is, you're just the symptom. He's the disease. She turned back to Mark, her tone calm, deliberate, final. I used to think you broke me. But now I realize, you built me. Every night you lied, I learned how to stand taller. Every time you gaslighted me, I sharpened my intuition. You didn't destroy me, Mark. You trained me. Mark blinked, speechless. Naomi, wait. She raised a hand. No, you wait. She walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up a sleek black folder. You know what this is? She said, flipping it open. Divorce papers, already signed. And guess what? She slid a second page across the table, a printout of an email. The gallery called. They're buying my art. My name will be in Vogue next month. Not because of you, not because of your money, but because of me. Mark's jaw dropped. What are you talking about? Naomi smirked. Oh, didn't I tell you? They loved that thrift store dress I wore last week to the charity event. They said it was raw, fearless, and original. Her voice softened into a razor-edged whisper. Funny how that's the same thing you said I'd never be. Tanya's eyes widened. Vogue, you mean? Naomi smiled faintly. Yeah, the same Vogue that said my look was the look of the night. She turned to Mark. And while you were too busy chasing shiny distractions, I was out here turning pain into power. Mark's eyes darted between them. Naomi, please, let's talk about this. We can fix. Stop, she said. You had your chance to talk. Now I'm done listening. She picked up her purse, slid her phone inside, and walked toward the door. Then she paused, turned back and said, Oh, and Mark, you might want to tell your mistress to find someone new, because starting tomorrow, you'll both be looking for a place to stay. The silence was thunderous. Naomi opened the door, stepped into the night air, and inhaled deeply, the kind of breath that tastes like freedom. The city lights blinked like applause. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel crazy. She felt alive. A week later, a glossy magazine arrived in the mail. On the cover, Naomi Carter, in her thrifted golden cream gown, standing tall under the headline, The Look of the Night, How Authenticity Became the New Luxury. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You look stunning. I'm proud of you. Naomi smiled, set the phone down, and whispered to herself, I know. Then she turned to her daughter, who was sketching quietly at the table. Baby, Naomi said gently, never let anyone tell you that your instincts are wrong. Sometimes, your heart knows before your eyes do. The little girl looked up, smiled, and nodded. And in that moment, Naomi realized the story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebirth.